Fox News Podcasts presents the Bret Baier Podcast with Fox News Chief Political Anchor Bret Baier.
Welcome to Washington. I'm Bret Baier. We're up on Capitol Hill tonight on the Senate side because we will speak in just a matter of moments to the Senate Majority Leader, John Thune, about the issues of the day, about health care, affordability, about Venezuela, and other topics. Senator Thune, thanks for the time.
Great to be with you. Thanks, Bret.
The health care question.
Right.
People are leaving. It's not dealt with. How does it get fixed?
Well, I think that the Democrats are going to have to come to the table and realize that a straight extension of Obamacare subsidies is not a sustainable future for the American people. You know, the Democrats talk about affordability. The least affordable thing that the American people have on their, in front of them today is the cost of health care. Because if you're buying your insurance in the Obamacare exchange, since its inception, a little over a decade ago, premiums have gone up 221%. And you look at that same time period, the CPI, the price we pay for everything else, has gone up about 39%. So you're looking at multiples, several 100% more for healthcare, and that's not a sustainable future for the American people.
Here's what you said last time we talked, end of September, about this. The premium tax credit issue is something we're willing to have a conversation about, but the fact of the matter is it's rife with waste, fraud, and abuse, needs reforms. I said, but you're willing to work on this issue in particular. You said, yeah, part of this is the base Obamacare program is not going to be affected. What's going to be affected is the enhancements the Democrats added when they had the majorities, but we're willing to have that conversation. You've got to do that. You can't do that in the context of a hostage-taking situation, which is where we are right now. Did they win the hostage-taking situation as far as the politics here?
Well,
because there's a lot of people that are going to see their health care premiums skyrocket.
Yeah, and in that marketplace, which represents about 7% of the American people who get their insurance through the Obamacare exchanges, particularly those that are above the 400% poverty level, which is where the Biden COVID bonuses kicked in. Yeah, they're seeing some increase. Now, there are other things they can do. They can shift around to different markets. But the fact of the matter is we're open to fixing and addressing this, but you got to do it in a way, Bret, that actually solves the problem and lowers costs. If you stay on this path right now with all the waste, fraud, and abuse, the same thing is true today that I said last September, and that is that there are no income caps, there are $0 premiums, there are literally millions of people in the exchange who don't even know they're covered because the payments go directly from the federal government to the insurance companies. And so people are they're auto-enrolled by the insurance companies, and there's no accountability in this program. And the Government Accountability Office just did an audit of this program, and of the 20 fake claims they submitted, 19 of them got approved. That's a 95% failure rate. So it's got to be reformed, and we're open to that. And if the Democrats want to work with us, we won't get it done before the Christmas holiday, but when we come back in January, there are discussions that are going on right now. We have folks who are interested in fixing it.
But you have these 4 Republicans in the House that voted with Democrats to have this vote to extend for 3 years. You're fully against that.
Right. They will send over to us if they are successful with this discharge petition. It'll come to the Senate. It'll be a straight 3-year extension of an unsustainable, unaffordable program. So, yes, it'll have to be reformed. And there are Senate Democrats who believe that it has to be reformed. And one of the issues behind this, too, is whether or not these policies are going to cover abortion. And that's something that's really important to our senators.
You talk about the percentage, but you're still talking about 22 million people that'll be affected here. That's a lot of constituents and a lot of races that you're going to be facing in 26. You look at the headlines. Obamacare expiration will have death spiral effect on U.S. healthcare. ACA shoppers face sticker shock. Healthcare costs are skyrocketing. Americans are starting to panic. Our polls concern about price of healthcare, 86%. Yes. I know you say you want to fix it, and there are bipartisan plans to try to do that, but you got to get across the finish line.
We do, but just to be clear, because 400% poverty and under, which for a family of 4 in this country is $128,000, that's the base Obamacare program. That stays in place. It's above that, and they took the income caps off. So now you got people making $500,000, $600,000 a year that are getting subsidies from the taxpayers to cover their insurance costs. That's the universe that's affected. And that's about 1.6 million people. So there are 1.6 million of the 24 million people who are actually going to see significant increases if they stay in that market. If they move around and find insurance other places, that can change. You can move to a bronze plan instead of a silver plan. There are lots of options that are available. But I'm one who believes that we ought to do everything we can to drive health care costs down. We did vote on a bill in the Senate last week that, according to the Congressional Budget Office, would reduce health insurance premiums by about double digits, 10 to 11%. And the Democrats block voted against it. There's a path here, if you want to fix this, with reforms that move us to a better program, which along the lines of what President Trump has proposed, and that is quit, putting the money in the pockets of the insurance companies and get it back in the hands of the American people.
Do you think that maybe the only way you're going to solve this is to put this health care into a reconciliation package that's filibuster-proof?
That's a possibility. Obviously, that's an option that is available. Ideally, it would be nice if we could solve this in a bipartisan way. I think that's in everybody's best interest. But we'll see. I mean, if not, then obviously we do have a reconciliation option available to us.
This comes amid the affordability debate, which Democrats are clearly signaling is going to be their issue in 26, at least right now. The president keeps saying that prices are going down and down. Do you think that rhetoric is the right rhetoric now until Americans really feel it?
And I think they will feel it. And I think the president, what he's reflecting on is how we got here. And he inherited this mess, the Biden administration, with all the spending that they did, trillions and trillions of dollars of spending, which flooded our economy with more dollars, which drove inflation up. So you were seeing double-digit inflation in this country for the first time literally in almost 50 years. And that's what President Trump had to come in and fix. And so I think he's reflecting on how we got to this place, how we got here in the first place. But he is committed, and so are we, to fixing it. And I think those steps that we took last summer, you're going to start to see that, and the American people are going to start to feel that. When you start seeing the impact of what we did on taxes and regulations and energy, and you're already seeing the cost of gasoline going down, you're going to see that in other areas. And there was a report that came out today.
It'll kick in.
It'll kick in. It will. And I think that, inflation, which, in the month of October was down 2.7%, or down to 2.7%, I should say, came down from what was expected. You're starting to see that already. But I also think you're going to see more growth in the economy because of the policy changes that we made. And when the economy is growing and expanding, it's throwing off better paying jobs. People are doing better. And I think what we're going to see in 2026 is safer streets. You're going to see more money in people's pockets, and you're going to see new opportunities to get ahead for the American people.
Different people look at polls differently. It's a snapshot in time, but you look at polls now, they're singing from the same sheet of music on the condition of the economy, and it's upside down. 28% say excellent or good, 72% say poor or fair. That's not a great environment to go into a midterm.
Right, and you can't convince people of something they don't feel, which is why I think eventually they're going to start feeling this. But we also have to get out and talk about what we've done. And the things that we did in the Family Tax Cuts Act that was passed earlier this year they're really unprecedented and historic. You think about no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, reducing taxes for seniors on Social Security, locking in lower rates, the doubling of the child tax credit, near doubling of the standard deduction, things that we did, some of which we did in 2017 that are now made permanent going forward and expanded. And you're going to see some significant tax breaks this next year for the American people. The projection is that the average family in this country is going to save about $3,700 because of what we did. And then you couple on top of that the things that we did on the business side that are going to create these incentives for capital investment, which are going to create better paying jobs in this country. I think you're going to see a remarkable 2026. I mean, we're excited about the prospects for the economy. And you look at the things we did and the other things in the one big beautiful bill, the school choice, child care tax credits, the newborn tax credits, or these accounts that are going to be created for people in this country. These are all pro-family initiatives that we think are going to start to yield big dividends.
So when you look at those polls, you say to those constituents, hold on?
Well, I think, yes. I mean, obviously it takes a little bit of patience. These things take, there's a lag always when you move major legislation, consequential legislation like this for the American people to start to feel it. But one of the reasons we moved so quickly to do it was so that they would start experiencing it sooner. And so as you get into an election year, we're coming into an even-numbered year in 2026, I think a lot of those things that we did, the policy changes that we made, are going to start to come to fruition, and you're going to see the impact of that on the pocketbooks of the American people. They're going to start feeling it. That's my prediction.
Look at the U.S. naval assets in the Caribbean right now. It's massive. We are still taking out, as a country, these Venezuelan drug boats. And there's pushback here on Capitol Hill from some Republicans, a lot of Democrats. Where are you on this policy, and do you think we are going to go to war in Venezuela?
Well, I think that what the president and his team have mapped out is a strategy to shut down the drug trade. And these cartels, which are designated terrorist organizations, the president has authority as commander-in-chief to go after these folks. They are killing literally tens of thousands of people in this country every year. And it's high time we did something about it. So I think the president is achieving the policy prescription that he put forward, which is peace through strength. And that applies not only other places around the world where we've got hot spots, but right here in our own hemisphere. And so I think it's the things that the president has done are having the desired effect. You're starting to see the number of these this activity. They're going to have to shift modes to get things into this country because they have, for all intents and purposes, have been shut down. And that's the desired effect. It's getting these poisonous drugs out of this country and keep them from killing literally every year tens of thousands of Americans.
You don't think this is about oil? It's about drugs.
I think it's about drugs, and obviously there's energy component in everything in this day and age. But obviously this isn't a regime that is corrupt, and frankly, the best thing the people of Venezuela could do is elect themselves a new leader, and they've tried, but it's a corrupt system.
Do you think Maduro takes the golden parachute and gets out somehow?
Well, it seems to me if I were him, that would make sense. I would not want to have the President of the United States or the might of the U.S. military staring me in the face, and I think that's where he is right now.
All right, we're going to take a quick pause here. We'll be back after this.
Let me ask you about next year. Currently, the Senate balance of power, 53-47. You have GOP senators not seeking re-election: Mitch McConnell, Joni Ernst, Tom Tillis, Tommy Tuberville. You have Democrats not seeking re-election as well, 4 of them. Where do you look at the map as you head into 2026, considering what you're projecting? But as you look at the map for the Senate, how do you see it?
Well, I feel good about where we are. I mean, obviously, we've had some retirements, but we've got really good candidates in some of those states. Our incumbents who are running for re-election are strong incumbents. They're veterans. They know how to win campaigns. And we've got some open seats that present an opportunity for us to pick up a seat or two. So the way I look at it, Bret, is, our job is to preserve and protect the Republican majority in the Senate, and if possible, where we have some opportunities to expand it. Now, it's a midterm election. Typically, there are headwinds in a midterm election, but I think, like I said, when a lot of the effects of some of the things that we've done start playing out in front of the American people, they're going to say this is a team we want to keep in place. President Trump obviously will be very important to getting voters out. His voters come out to support him, sometimes don't come out in a midterm election, so he'll be key to ensuring that we have strong turnout. But we've got quality candidates. I think a record of accomplishment to run on, and we need to have resources to get the message out, and then we've got to be really focused on the ground game, and that is turning the voters out.
But you think it might be tight majorities if Republicans do win?
It could be. I mean, obviously the House is certainly incredibly tight already, and ours is a fairly tight majority as well. And but how these, some of these open seats, North Carolina is a really good example, will be a very expensive race. But if we do well in North Carolina, we're going to do well across the country.
A couple of quick ones. The president signing this executive order easing restrictions on marijuana for research gets some pushback in some corners of the Republican caucus. Where are you?
Yeah, well, I'm not a fan of recreational marijuana. I think it is a gateway. I think it has some really bad effects, particularly on young people in this country. I think what the president's doing here is trying to expand the possibility for medicinal use and research, and there's particular applications, I think, when it comes to our veteran population that he's trying to address. But I think that he recognizes, just like many of us do, that's where it ought to be confined. And I think just opening up the gates to marijuana use across this country, in my view, would be a huge mistake.
The Kennedy Center board voted today to rename the Kennedy Center the Trump Kennedy Center. Is that going to fly up here?
I just heard about it. And so obviously we are just starting to process that announcement. They've asked me, aren't you on that board? And I'm like, well, I'm a non-voting. I'm an honorary member. I'm not a voting member of that board. So yeah, we'll take a look at it for sure and see where that goes. But Obviously the president is heavily invested in trying to make some of these monuments around Washington, D.C., make this a better place to live and to work and to raise your families. And I think we've seen the effects of that, the results of that when it comes to the safety on our streets here in Washington, D.C. Now, I don't live here. I live in South Dakota, but I do work here. And I feel a lot more confident, as I think most people who work and move around here do, since the president's taken the steps that have tried to secure our streets.
But the pushback, I mean, it's not just Democrats. There'll be some Republicans that say these are historic monuments that need to be named this thing that they were named. Otherwise, we're going to go back and forth, president to president, changing names of monuments.
Yeah, and we'll look at, because it's such a new announcement, I'm not familiar with the process of how this is done. There's a question of whether or not it's in law. Is it statutory? Do we have to change the law to do these sorts of things? And I'm sure we'll get all the answers to that in due time.
When you look at, last thing, the policies that came out of everything you all passed up here on Capitol Hill, of everything the president did in executive orders, there's a lot of Republicans who look at that and say, we're on board. Policy. When things are talked about how the president talks about different things, sometimes it doesn't sit well with some members of the Republican caucus or independents, definitely not Democrats. How do you deal with that? How do you characterize that? You've dealt with, obviously, President Trump for many years.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we're different styles. I think it's safe to say. The president has his own way of communicating, and it's been very successful and effective for him. He won a huge election this last fall. The American people believed in his agenda, the message he was carrying out there, and the things that he's done to deliver on that. So I think he's got an incredibly loyal base of support. The people in the middle, those independents that are what I call the middle of the electorate, which decides elections, especially some of these competitive elections in states where you've got, it's sort of, we call them purple states, whatever you want to call them. Sometimes how you say things matters. And obviously, I think as we get into this election year, I expect the president to be out on the trail and communicating in a way that is winsome, not just to our Republican base, the people who already love him, but also to the middle of the electorate, the people that we're trying to win over. And I think the best way to win them over is with his policies, which I think are going to make big differences in their lives.
Senator Thune, when you look at the polls about congressional performance, they are really upside down.
Right.
And it's often like that. People don't get a sense of everything that's happening up here. But how do you change 36% approval?
Well, I mean, I think that part of it is putting up a record of accomplishment and then getting out and talking about it. The one thing that I don't think we've done effectively yet, and we will because this is an election year coming up in 2026, is get out there and talk about the things we've done. And as I said, as the message gets out there and people start feeling in their pocketbooks the impact of a lot of these policies, I think most people are what I would call pocketbook voters. They're kitchen table, just bread and butter type issues that they care about. And I think you're going to start seeing the impact of the things that we've done in their daily lives. I think that'll start moving people in our direction when it comes to choice, the contrast between us and the Democrats. But how do you make us more likable? I mean, it's been said that Congress, when you get down to where we are now, it's kind of paid staff and blood relatives, and that might be about the size of it. But I think part of it, too, is we're coming off a 43-day government shutdown.
Right.
Nobody benefited from that. And everybody looks at Congress, both sides, Republican and Democrat, says, why can't you guys figure this out? Now, in my view, they should be blaming the Democrats because they're the ones who shut the government down for 43 days. But the fact is the American people look at Congress and I think it's a pox on all of us. So I think that's perhaps had some impact on these ratings that you're seeing. And it's up to us to try and change that by getting out and putting up a record of accomplishment.
I totally agree. When I talk to people out there, they say, what is this? This is why I hate Washington.
Yeah.
Here's what you said about the government shutdown September when we talked. We are Republicans united, House Republicans, Senate Republicans. President Trump, House Republicans have passed a short-term funding resolution that's clean, nonpartisan, came over to the Senate, sitting at the desk of the Senate. In Chuck Schumer's universe, we didn't do appropriations bills. It was all written behind closed doors in his office, and now he's upset because he isn't being consulted on everything because we're doing things the way we should be doing them, allowing Republican senators and Democratic senators to work together to pass those bills. It sounded optimistic then, obviously went into 43 days
right.
of this shutdown.
Yeah.
Are we going to finish this cycle of going up against a fiscal cliff? Are we eventually going to see Congress go back to so-called regular order?
I hope so, and I had a conversation with Senator Schumer earlier today on that very subject because we are up against another funding deadline. I don't think anybody wins in a government shutdown. I think shutdowns are stupid, and I think that's a view that President Trump shares as well. And it's why it was so unfortunate. But I think what the Democrats discovered, because we've been through this a couple of times since I've been here and on our side, is that it's a lot easier to get into a government shutdown than it is to get out of it. And so when they slid into this thing, and then all their special interest groups on the far left were cheering them on, and it becomes a lot harder. Frankly, it's good that there were a handful of Democrats who had the good sense to say, we need to end this. And unfortunately, we did. But it lasted way too long, and now we're up against another funding deadline. But my sense is, Bret, that there is enough PTSD, if you will, in both Republicans and Democrats about just the consequences and the toxic nature of government shutdowns. And I'm hoping that that's going to work to getting both sides to come together on the basic things. And we're going to disagree on a lot of stuff. And you talked about health care, very different visions there. But when it comes to funding the government, those are basic things that the American people expect that we ought to be able to do, and we ought to be able to work together. And I'm hopeful that's going to be the case.
Last thing on Ukraine. President Zelensky is saying he would like the U.S. to move from mediation talks to pressuring Moscow. Do you agree?
You know, I do share that view. I'm very sympathetic to the president, his team, to Secretary Rubio, Secretary Hegseth, and others who are on the front lines of a lot of these discussions and negotiations. But I think anything that we can put in the president's toolbox that gives him additional leverage in dealing with the Russians is a good thing. And there are a couple of bills that have been hanging around up here for a while. One on Russia sanctions. It's a bill that Lindsey Graham and others have put out. It's got like 85 co-sponsors in the Senate, Democrat and Republican. And as soon as the president and his team feel like that's a useful tool for them, we're anxious to move on it. But I just think you want to have as many tools as you can at your disposal when you're dealing with leaders like Vladimir Putin, who understands nothing but strength. You have to project strength, and I think the peace through strength approach the president's taken all around the world is paying huge dividends. And the jury is still out in Russia and Ukraine. But I'm hopeful there that his approach to this is going to be something that ultimately gets us to a peaceful outcome.
Been in this job for a little while now. If you had a Christmas wish when it comes to Capitol Hill, what would it be?
You know, I'm somebody who's very purpose-driven, and I want to see people who are working here, serving here, and a ton of people who work here who are very purpose-driven and willing to serve causes that are greater than themselves. And, you know, that to me is making this a better place for future generations, for our kids and grandkids. And that means we have to work together, which is hard. This is a very polarized environment. I've spoken about that. I spoke about it on the floor just this week a couple of different times, too. And the hostility that some folks on the other side of the aisle have toward this president is unlike anything I've seen in American politics, certainly in my lifetime. But it's sometime you have to pull together and understand that we are in this together. And we're going to have big differences of opinion. No doubt about that. We'll litigate that at the ballot box in 2026. But after that's over, particularly when it comes to issues of national security and the betterment of the American people, we ought to be looking for ways to get together and work to achieve some things that really matter for our country.
Senator, thank you.
Thanks, Bret.
Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.